Let's take a look at the fantasy basketball waiver wire. Who are the guys being added and dropped? What are the moves? Well, we'll find out. Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NBA fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and it's a sad day when you find out that Sunny Boys are no longer being manufactured. I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Twitter, as always, at redrock_bball, on TikTok at redrock_bball, and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Check out your favorite team's newsletter, lockedondaily.com, and sign up for your daily dose of information about your favorite NBA team, and also double bang these videos and comment and subscribe and all that stuff. Let's talk about the fantasy basketball waiver wire. What do we need to cover off? Who has been added and dropped, and are they the correct moves? And who's an injury replacement, and who are guys that just are sitting around on too many waiver wires? I think you by now probably know the pattern that we do this. Let's just start with the most added players. And for some reason, I don't know what it is, on Fantrax today, when I went to take a look at who the most added players were, not a single player has a positive ad rate. Now, Fantrax, all of these sites that I'm using here, I use Basketball Monster's advanced roster numbers, I use Yahoo's trends, and I use Fantrax trends. They all have different sort of time frames. Yahoo's, they never actually specify what the time frame is in the ads and drops. I think it's daily, but I don't know. They don't specify it. Basketball Monster, you can set a time frame, and usually when I do these shows, I do 48 hours, and Fantrax's is the last week. So according to Fantrax's data, I think something has to be wrong, that no one has seen an increase in roster percentage, which again is crazy. It makes no sense at all. So I'm not including them in the most added player portion. So we've got the top three there from Basketball Monster. Bubbles Carrington, Carlton Carrington. Look, he's playing really well. It is obviously helping that Kyle Kuzma is out. But I do think that Bubs will just stay starting, even when Kuzma returns, and it'll be someone like Keyshawn George who moves to the bench. Because we thought that it was a possibility that they'd start Valanciunas when Kuzma was out, but they didn't. They just kept Bub in there, and Bub had one game on the bench, and he moved back in, and George is the guy that stepped up into the starting group. Bub is going to have some efficiency problems at a point here, but yeah, look, for now, we just roll with that. Ayo Dosunmu has been one of the most added players. The Bulls do have a strong schedule this rest of this week, but also it's the absence of Zach LaVine. 27 minutes of Dosunmu is not good enough. It doesn't mean anything. It's not useful for fantasy. But if you're planning forward and Zach LaVine misses, then yeah, he played like 36 minutes last game, and that's part of why I was a little bit down on Dosunmu. I didn't mind picking him in the last rounds because there was too many guys there, and he couldn't get 35 minutes, which is actually what he needs. But he can now because Lonzo's out, and if LaVine misses again, then he will get those minutes. So that's fine, and it's fine to hold him through the lower volume days and then make that decision after that. And Toumani Camara has also been one of the most added players. To me, he's not, like I know people were going to argue that, he's almost at the moment turning into one of the guys that's the real 9-cat rank winners. One of those players that gets the real boost because of the low turnovers and I was going to say, and it makes him seem better than he is. And the high volume of steals increases and inflates that ranking. Camara is fine. He is playing really well. I've also heard some arguments pushing back on me not loving Camara, saying that, well, he's not losing his role. I'm pretty sure he will lose minutes at some point, unless you believe that Shaedon Sharpe or Denny Avdia come off the bench. Like one of those two has to then move to the bench. It's Camara, it's Avdia, Sharpe. Like they can't all start, right? So Camara at the moment is putting up good numbers. He is the 94th ranked player according to straight 9-cat rankings, but largely because he's averaging 1.8 steals and averaging 0.9 turnovers. Like under 10 points, 2.5 assists, 1.5 threes, 46 and 64%. Like every other number is bad, but it's good steals. So that is part of why I've developed things like Durant and category weightings and all that sort of stuff, because you will look at that and go, well, Toumani Camara, top 100 player. That's so obvious. Well, we've got to do it. Like he's flying at the moment. Because he's getting steals. That's it. That's all he's doing. Everything else is not that exciting. So when we talk about look, no problem you want to add him. The role is there. It's 31, 32 minutes a night. I don't think that lasts long-term at that level. And it's just steals. That's what you're getting. You're getting steals. All right, so I do not think that he is this very clear must-roster guy. The top added players on Yahoo, it's the three guys that we talked about yesterday. Peyton Watson as the Aaron Gordon replacement, Julian Champagny as the Jeremy Sohan replacement, and Goga Bitadze as the Wendell Carter Jr. replacement. I'll just turn this on to say, yes, I agree all those guys should be added, right? Watson and Champagny less so in points leagues, and even Goga, they're not as impactful in points leagues as they are in category leagues, but you're worth having a look just to see where it goes, right? These are all, maybe not so much Goga, but the other two are relatively long-term injuries. The flip side of that, like what do you do if you've got Sohan? What do you do if you've got Aaron Gordon? What do you do if you've got Wendell Carter? Well, if we're going to talk standard formats, 12-team leagues or 10-team leagues, and your IL is filled, well, you just drop them. Those guys are not good enough to hold on your bench for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 5 weeks, whatever it is. They're not good enough to do that. The very similar idea that as soon as the Bogdanovic news came out, we love Bogdan, but if you don't have that IL slot, you can't hold him for that long. We're not talking top 50 players here. We're talking guys that are sort of maybe your 9th best in best case scenario, but like Aaron Gordon's your 12th and Wendell Carter's your 13th best player and Sohan's your 10th best or whatever. You can't hold on to those players in scenarios where you need your IL. So that's always going to be an individual decision and an individual roster move. You look at how everything plays out. But I don't think that they're guys that, like, if you drop them, I'd go, yeah, that's crazy. Also, another thing, like, it's great that you picked Sohan late and he blew up and he started playing really well. That's why I hate those leagues with one IL. And it's one of those things that makes leagues uneven. It makes them uneven because it enables teams that are better and are having less injury luck to then stash the injured players that the teams that are struggling dropped. And then when those guys come back, the rich get richer, all right? Which is not a good way to ensure competitiveness in a fantasy league. The most dropped players. Well, in this one, we do have some fan track data, so we'll go in and talk about that. But according to our Basketball Monster numbers, the number one most dropped player is Mr. Black. No surprise. He started one game. That was worth a look. And then he was terrible. And he's been terrible since. And his upside wasn't high enough to go through the garbage games. Often there are players who have garbage games, looking at you, Fred VanVleet. But you know what the upside is. You know how high it gets, and you know there's a lot of stuff that's going to bounce back. But when someone's upside is low, like Anthony Black, and then they chuck in absolute stinkers, well, you don't bother with that. Then you just move on. Caris LeVert, also one of the most dropped players. His role was not as I expected. I thought he'd be an okay late round pick, especially with Max Strus out, but no. And now he's injured himself. Sort of in and out with the questionable tab, but yeah, like move on. The most dropped player on Yahoo is Jeremy Sohan. We just talked about that. And the other one is BDNR Nick Richards, who is out for multiple weeks. I'm guessing it's 4 weeks here for Richards. We don't know when Mark Williams is returning. Maybe next week. I don't know. I would think Williams is back before Richards. And in the meantime, the Hornets are going to be going with Diabate, Gibson, and Grant Williams. But yeah, drop Nick Richards very clearly. And then the most dropped on Fantrax are Kevon Looney and Jay Huff, which I could not agree with more. Could not agree with that more. Today's episode is actually brought to you by a new partner. And that new partner is Skims. Yes, Skims. I'm going to guess that majority of us wear underwear. Yeah? Decent guess. Well, sometimes you get underwear and you go, what is this? Like, it doesn't feel good. I'm constantly feeling it throughout the day. It's uncomfortable. It's not giving me support. It's ridiculous. Well, Skims is something you've probably heard about before, but did you know that Skims now has a men's range? The Skims men's stuff I think does. Sorry, Skims, if this is not in your read, but they have a partnership with the NBA as well. And I got some Skims. I got some Skims for men, and I've been wearing them. Like, I've heard of these for a long time, and I like it. They're very comfortable. The material is super comfortable. It feels like you're wearing nothing at all. It feels, I don't know. I don't know how to explain it, but you know when you get a pair of underwear that's great, and like as guys, we will do something that's great. We wear it, awesome, and then we wear it for 5 years straight because, hey, it's so comfortable. It's just, I'm never going to find something like that again. Well, that's the feeling that you get when you get Skims. So the ones that I've been wearing are the 5-inch boxer briefs with the stretch material. Super comfortable. I don't wear them every day, clearly. Just put them in the wash. Got a couple of pairs. We cycle through them, but I do want to get more because they are super comfortable. You can wear them all the time. Feels a bit like, the inner part of like workout shorts, but it's that comfortable in a full brief build. Build? That's not the right word, but you know what I mean. This is the thing that you've been looking for. You're looking for that super comfy pair of undies. Well, Skims for men does it. It's there. It's awesome. Shop Skims Men's at skims.com. Let them know that we sent you. So after you place your order, you select podcast in the survey and select our show in the drop-down menu that follows. And if you're looking for the perfect gifts for the whole family, Skims just launched their biggest holiday shop ever, which is also available at skims.com. All right, let's move on to the next part of this waiver wire show, and this is the must roster section. It is a little bit tough because Yahoo doesn't release the data. I've tried to find out how many dead leagues they've got. Just again, so we're aware of what happened with Yahoo this season. They changed their default setting from 12-team category leagues to 10-team points leagues. They also ran a million banner ads where it said, hey, you want to do a draft, where you click it and you were automatically placed in the league. The draft started so you couldn't leave it. So now there are a greater percentage of 10-team leagues on Yahoo, and there are a greater percentage of dead leagues, because there are so many people, which I've never seen these complaints before, saying, what am I doing? I'm not in this league. I don't want to be in this league. Get me out of this league. And they can't. So they sit there and it's just a dead league, which is also going to impact players' Yahoo ratings, which again are a completely flawed metric, but whatever. That's a separate point. So we have to, like, in the past, I would look at like 80% rostered on Yahoo as a decent metric to see like who is under rostered. Now I think we've got to look at 60, because this is going to be the great barometer. Taylor Hendricks sits at 30% rostered still. Players like GG Jackson sit at 2% rostered, suggesting to me that dynasty leagues are 2% of leagues. Let's say 3%, because GG is going to be rostered in basically every dynasty league on Yahoo. So that's about 3%, 2% for GG, 30 for Hendricks. Now last week Hendricks was at 33, so it actually he has dropped a little bit in the last week. But we're thinking there's like 30% at least sort of dead leagues here. And there would be a bunch of like 10-teamers that didn't even draft Hendricks to begin with. So I'm using 60% Yahoo rostered as a cutoff, suggesting to me there's about 40% of dead leagues, give or take. Yep. There are 3 players who I believe are top 100 players rest of season who sit under that 60% metric. Dyson Daniels, the Dustbuster, Bilal Coulibaly, and Alex Sarr. All of these guys, according to my Basketball Monster advanced roster metric, are rostered everywhere. That's true. We use a standard 12-team format to get that number. But that, again, that's not everybody. And the reason I know that this is not true is that I still have people asking me about, what do? I've dropped Dyson, or someone added him, or I can go and grab Bilal now, but I don't like the schedule, or do you believe in Alex Sarr? People still ask me. It's smaller enough percentages. But I'll just put this out now. I won't answer any more questions about these guys for the next week. If Dyson Daniels, Bilal Coulibaly, and Alex Sarr are available in your league, you add them. Easy. That's for category leagues. I've got 4 names, and the 4th name that I've got here on the Points League one sort of applies to categories as well. Maybe less so, because I don't think his game is quite as good in category leagues. But it's Shaedon Sharpe, who is about to return from injury pretty soon, I think. He's a better points league guy. To me, he's a category league guy around 120. Points league is like 95. So if you're in a points league, yeah, Dyson and Sarr and Bilal are all guys to grab. And I'd be very interested in grabbing Shaedon Sharpe, who's about like 45% rostered, I think. I'd be very happy to grab him now. See where the injury update comes. It's probably coming in a week. So that's another one of the things we're preaching a little bit more this season, is a little bit of short-term pain for some longer-term gain. It is something that you need to accept in the fantasy landscape, that if you're doing buy lows and sell high trades and making stash moves like this, is sometimes you need to have that short-term pain. And adding a Sharpe, even if you don't, like, this is where that decision comes in. Do I drop a Sohan or an Aaron Gordon because I need that IL slot to stash a Shaedon Sharpe? Well, one guy might come back in a week and the other's is 5 weeks away. And while it sounds like you can argue whether Sohan is better than Sharpe, and I think he is, but in the meantime, like, just getting someone in who's going to be back and active, I think is probably a better strategy for a 4 or 5 week window at least. So that's how I'd be viewing that part of it. This next part is harder to do,
Get that garbage out of here.
It's the droppable players. Again, I wanted to look at guys who are rostered fairly highly that I am not certain of their long-term value. Remembering, I'm not telling you to drop any players like this. I am not telling you to drop these players. What I am telling you with these players I'm about to mention, and you can see them on the screen if you're watching, is that if they're on your roster, if Jonathan Kuminga, Brandin Podziemski, and Denny Avdia are on your roster, you might not have to have them there. This goes into 10s and 12-team leagues because always we're doing honest appraisals of our roster. Who's the worst player? And if these guys are the worst player, what's their actual upside this season given the way that both teams are playing and all those teams all those players are performing? What's the upside of them? What's Denny's upside? 100th best player? What's Kuminga's in a 25-minute bench or 110th? What's Podziemski playing 25 minutes? 130th? Now, if they were to play 33 minutes each, then yeah, sure. But that's not happening at the moment. Patience is key, and I would be probably holding for a little bit longer on all three of these players. All I'm saying is if you get into a crunch, and if your league leans shallower, and these guys are sitting there, I don't think that it's going to kill you too much if you need to move on. Is that enough, caveats? I hope so. Who are some players that are sort of cooking at the moment? Who are the guys that over the last week have been pushing way up and are available in a lot of spots? Lu Dort. I don't think he's good. I don't think he's a good fantasy player. I don't. But he has been. The numbers have been really strong for Dort over the last week or so, and he still remains at a really low roster percentage. They're cycling through your Cason Wallaces and Aaron Wigginses and Isaiah Joes through those positions, and Dort might lose out even more, say, when Isaiah Hartenstein eventually returns, but that's okay. That's not happening now. And Dort is a very hit-or-miss player. I'm aware of this. But he does have value in the short term that is greater than the percentage of rosters that he's on. Gershon Yabusele. Now, I don't know that this one has any real long-term value. He was great in their last game. Embiid is out for the rest of this week, and Yabusele at times has been outplaying Andre Drummond. He's pushed into the top 100 over the last week, and that's surprising, for sure. I don't think that I would act on that too much, but he's worth at least considering. Tari Eason's one of those hot players, and he is available in some spots. Unfortunately, he's questionable at the moment with illness for Wednesday. We know that thing with Tari, just look at his last two games, right? The big 34-minute explosion and then 7 points in 23 minutes or whatever it was. They said they're trying to push more minutes into him, but all of the ways that he gets minutes has to be something weird happening. Or Jabari Smith got benched and played 24, or Şengün played 22 minutes, and Brooks fouled out or whatever, because they don't seem to have a plan to start him, and they're not finding a way to get him 30 minutes off the bench regardless. Now, he probably only needs 24 to 25 to be a consistent player, and he should be on a roster, but I don't think this is the opening of the floodgates for Tari, maybe never season. Royce O'Neal's been also really good. He is hit or miss, and he is low upside, but as long as the Suns go small, and they've been going small less of late, and they're playing a little bit more Grayson Allen, that will impact O'Neal. He is totally okay to have, but he's one of the more expendable fantasy players, I think. And then there's two Raptors players who are definitely taking advantage of some injuries. Davion Mitchell with his high assists and high steals, who is taking advantage of Emmanuel Quickley being out. And as long as Emmanuel Quickley is out, Mitchell's ability to get those steals and assists, it's there, right? And that value is fine. And the other one is Ochai Agbaji. The first game without Barnes, it was John Mobo who started. And then they went to Agbaji, who has been good, honestly, in the majority of games this season. Long term, if this team is healthy with Barnes, Quickly, Olynyk, Brown, all returning. There's a lot of names who are going to play minutes. Agbaji won't be able to do anything like this. I'm very confident of that. But at the moment, I've got him on a few teams, and I don't like him as a player. I don't think he's a very good fantasy player, but that doesn't matter because in the short term, he is producing, and then we move on later. So I don't like either of those guys, honestly, Mitchell and Agbaji, as players or long-term fantasy producers. But for now, yeah, we're there, and that's the value that we're getting from those players, because that's how we should be working in fantasy, is trying to get the most out of those little opportunities that arise for us. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle all of the NFL action on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook right now. If you're a new customer, you can go and bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything that you need. You can be there with a hunch in the middle of the game, live betting the NFL and see something developing. You open up your app and you see the place where you place the bets. It's right there. But in that same spot, instead of having to go somewhere different to find the information, the live stats are there. The live play-by-play is there. It is all in that same spot to make placing those live NFL bets easier. So when you do get that hunch, just open up the FanDuel app and you're there. Go to FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That is FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And don't forget to gamble responsibly. Okay, let's round out this waiver wire show now. Let's talk about some guys with some injury replacement appeal. I'm trying, and I think I've succeeded, to not double up on names that I've talked about in earlier parts of the show. I've talked about Julian Champagny. I've talked about Peyton Watson. I've talked about Goga Bitadze. I've talked about Davion Mitchell and O'Shea Abaji. Let's talk about some other guys. The horse, Keldon Johnson. I'm fairly certain that Johnson won't start. I think that it will be... Well, that's not true. I'm not 100% certain, but I think it'll be Steph Castle that starts, and I'm not very interested in him as an injury replacement guy. He's shown me nothing to suggest that he will get big minutes or be a good fantasy player so far. Keldon Johnson will be the other one outside of Champagny, and then Devin Vassell will come back and push those guys back down anyway. The other one in Denver to watch is Julian Strawther, who played really well last game. And with Jamal Murray out and Aaron Gordon out, Strawther's ability to shoot and score might be important. Now, he can't really defend. He doesn't play the same position as Peyton Watson or Aaron Gordon. But I do think there are some minutes increases coming here for Strawther. And if you missed out on Watson, I don't mind grabbing Strawther. Watson would be my priority. But it's also distinctly possible that Strawther outperforms Peyton Watson in a points league. He's got a more points-friendly game than what Peyton does. Tristan Da Silva has started the last couple of games for the Magic, and there is a long period of time here where Paolo Banchero is out. Da Silva has not done enough in those games to suggest that he is a must-roster player, but if you just play 30 minutes a night, gain a little bit of experience, and they stick with him in that role, then it might be something. He's very clearly the guy at the moment over Anthony Black, which that wasn't the case in the first game, and if Da Silva struggles like he has the last two games, he might not stay there. But this is all about opportunity is there, and we'll see where it goes. I'm not advocating Da Silva as a must-roster 12-team league guy. I don't think that's right. But it's one of those players that we're watching. If you've got deeper benches or you want to think that you're in the most competitive league in the world where you guys, if you lose the league, you have to put the other guy to the sword and make sure he dies right in front of the other league mates, well, then maybe Da Silva's a guy you grab now, just for that competitiveness. Jose Alvarado, yes, he just did pop up on the injury report today with a questionable tag, but he is a must-roster player across all leagues because there's no CJ McCollum and there's no DeJounte Murray. Must-roster. His teammate, BJ Boston, who, it's going to depend a little bit here on Jordan Hawkins. Now, Hawkins will also be an injury replacement guy who has no shot of being a long-term player in my mind. But if Hawkins remains out, Boston, I think he's really good. And I would love to see them find a way to get him 20 minutes a night irrespective. That's just not going to happen as a two-way player. But if Hawkins is out, then we are rolling with Boston. And if Hawkins plays, Boston's more of a 16-team league player in the short term. The other one that could be extraordinarily short term is Najee Marshall. Derek Lively missed the last game and is doubtful for this game. And PJ Washington is out for this game. So Marshall almost assuredly is going to start. He's going to play 30-plus minutes. He's a sneaky passing guy. He has some shooting hot streaks. But he's just going to get there and bludgeon through minutes. They don't have any fours. Their backup five is going to be like Dwight Powell or whatever's left of Markieff Morris's rooted neck. What else is there? Olivier Maxence Prosper, who honestly just can't play at this point. Marshall's going to play a lot. And I wouldn't be surprised if he turns into I was going to say bargain basement Royce O'Neal. But honestly, a better Royce O'Neal because he gets more minutes. The thing with that is that Lively and Washington might miss this game and then that's it. And I don't know how far that goes. But we saw last game with Lively out, they just played Najee at center at times. So, there's a little bit of something there with Najee Marshall. I've got 6 other names I want to talk about here that just deserve some discussion regarding the waiver wire. Keyshawn George. I'm going to put Keyshawn George and even Jalen Wells in that same discussion. While both of those guys are starting for Washington and Memphis respectively, that they are worth looking at. George has flashed more stuff, I think, in Washington than he did in college in Miami. He's shown sometimes passing skills, blocking skills, steals, which he didn't really do in Miami. He was just like a very empty sort of scorer. While Kuzma is out, George is putting up numbers worthy of 12-team rostering. Jalen Wells, while Desmond Bain and Marcus Smart and all the other wings are out, is starting and playing 35 minutes. Now, he'll have nights where he scores 17, Jalen Wells, and he'll have nights where he scores 7. That's what happens. But I think both guys, when you're looking at like who's a flyer guy that's going to play 35, who can get hot and hit me 6 threes, and add a couple of other things around there, I think both those guys have to be looked at. I'm going to put Amen Thompson in this list. He's not 100% rostered. He's played 30 minutes in each of the last 2 games, which is more than Tari Eason. I love Amen as a player. He really has struggled early in this season. I don't know if this is a changing of the guard, but what did happen last game is Cam Whitmore got taken out of the rotation. And we did see Amen play a lot more minutes, and that was interesting. So, I don't even know who honestly, I don't know who I would prioritize, Amen or Tari. It's probably Amen, but he's obviously someone to look at. The next 4 names I'm going to mention here are guys that I didn't put on that droppable list because some of their roster numbers have gone down anyway. But I think they're guys that we need to have discussions on. And one's Alex Caruso. I don't even know. Actually, I don't think we need to have that discussion anymore.
Get that garbage out of here!
He was never a high-value points league player to begin with, but he was a guy that if he played 28 minutes in category leagues, he's a top 100 player. He's not doing that. You don't hold on to him. If they change their structure and players get injured and Caruso moves back up, then sure, no worries. But they just got so many deep... Like, they're playing guys like AJ Mitchell, and he's actually successful at it. Their structure and their coach are so good that they don't need Caruso to do... Like, he's still really good when he's out there. He's a great steal streamer, but you don't have to roster him. Mike Conley. Conley has been fine. But fine, with no upside to be great, he's not really good enough. And if I'm in a shallow league, or even a standard 12, Conley's okay. If I saw your roster and Mike Conley was okay, then that makes some sense. But like always, if we recircle back to the start of the show, honest appraisal. Who's your worst player? And if it's him, he's droppable. Scoot Henderson, droppable. Simple as that. I thought that we saw encouraging signs from Scoot at the end of last season. I thought surely they picked this guy number 3. They traded away Damian Lillard. We'd like to see what he's able to do. And now he plays 24 minutes a night coming off the bench, even with Shaden Sharp out. Like, no thanks. Delano Banton scores 20 points in a quarter to bring him back. Scoots was already on is his game actually good enough to roster? Well, we like a high usage 30-plus minute a night guard. He's not that now. So if you wanted to move on, do it. We've got 3 games left before Joel Embiid returns. And Andre Drummond, in the games that Joel Embiid has been out, has not been very good. So the idea with Drummond was, Embiid is out. He'll play good minutes. While Embiid is out, he'll give you top 50 numbers. And then it becomes a decision of if you can hold and see what happens with Embiid. Drummond has not been good enough in these games out to justify a must rostering. And this is one of those ones. Yeah, you'll get better numbers the next 3 games, but if something else appears that you want to grab, a Peyton Watson, Goga Bitadze, if you want to grab them now, cut Drummond, who cares? The value's not really high enough, I don't think, to justify him as a must hold and must roster player. And that, legends, is a waiver wire show. Tell me down in the comments here on YouTube if there's someone else that you're targeting on the waiver wire or someone else you're considering dropping. I would love to hear that, but I'd also love to see a thumb and a subscribe, and let's hit that 80K mark. Let's hit it today. Let's hit 80K subs today. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.